You're standing in the checkout line at the only real grocery store in town, population 2,400, holding a basket with dish soap, a bag of coffee, and a birthday card for your neighbor's kid, and the woman ahead of you is having a slow, unhurried conversation with the cashier about whether the frost is going to hold off long enough to get the last of the tomatoes in. Nobody's in a rush here. That's the whole point of this place, or at least the whole point of it to you. You've got $80 million sitting in accounts scattered across 3 custodians, and you're standing in a checkout line built for a town where the biggest financial event of most years is whether the co-op's fertilizer prices go up or down, and the gap between those two facts has never once, in 11 years, felt like a contradiction to you. It's felt like the entire design. The cashier, a woman named Dot who's rung up your groceries every week since you moved here, asks how the garden's coming along, and you tell her the deer got into the beans again, and she laughs and says that's the 3rd house on your road this month, and you pay in cash, the way you almost always do here, and walk out to a truck that's older than some of the kids working the register. $80.4 million, give or take what the markets did on Friday. You know the number the way you know most numbers about your life now, clearly, but without any particular charge attached to it, the same way you know your own height, or your blood type. A fact, filed, checked periodically, rarely thought about between checks. The best place to hide a fortune was never a private island or a gated compound. It was a town small enough that everyone already thinks they know exactly who you are, because nobody there has ever had a reason to ask twice. This is the part almost nobody believes when you try to explain it. Hiding this kind of money isn't about elaborate secrecy. It's about picking the one environment on Earth where the math simply never occurs to anyone, because the entire town runs on a completely different set of assumptions about what a life is supposed to look like. You didn't move here to hide anything, not at first. You moved here 9 years after the money arrived, from a windfall in a business you built and sold in your 30s, because the city apartment that had once felt like ambition started, somewhere in your 40s, to feel like a waiting room for a life you'd already stopped wanting. You looked at the usual places first, the ones people with this kind of money are supposed to look: a coastal town 2 hours from a major city, the kind with a country club and a marina and a specific unspoken dress code for a Tuesday lunch. You toured a house there once, beautiful, obscene, $17 million, and you remember standing in the kitchen while the realtor described the town's social calendar, the galas, the specific families you'd be expected to know within a year, and you understood, standing there, that buying this house won't be buying privacy at all. It would be buying membership in a very small, very attentive audience, all of whom would know your number within a month of your first appearance at a gala, and all of whom would recalibrate every future interaction with you accordingly. You bought a farmhouse instead, 4 hours from the nearest city with a real airport, in a town where the biggest news story the year you arrived was a dispute over whether the volunteer fire department needed a second truck. Nobody here has a category in their head for person worth $80 million, because nobody here has ever met one, and the absence of the category turns out to matter more than any amount of actual concealment ever could. You can't hide from people who already have a slot in their mind reserved for someone like you. You can only hide by finding people who've never had to build that slot at all. The test of this, the real one, happens in your 3rd year here, when a contractor named Hollis comes out to fix a section of your barn roof that's been sagging since before you bought the place. Hollis does good, honest work, charges you a fair price, and over the 3 days he's on the property, you talk more than you expect to, about his kids, about the drought 2 summers back, about a truck he's saving up for. On the last day, standing in your driveway settling up, he glances at your own truck, the same 8-year-old one you drive everywhere, and says, half joking, "You ever think about getting something nicer? Man out your way's got money, I hear." He means someone else, a farmer 3 properties over whose family's owned mineral rights for 4 generations and made a real, if modest by your standards, fortune off it. You laugh and say you're doing all right, which is true in the same technically accurate, wildly understated way. Getting by was true for you decades earlier, back before any of this money existed at all. Hollis nods, satisfied, and the conversation moves on to whether the barn roof will hold through another winter. That exchange tells you everything you need to know about how this works. Hollis has a category in his head for rich, and it's the farmer 3 properties over, a man whose wealth is real but visible, calibrated to a scale Hollis actually understands. You don't fit that category, not because you've concealed anything specific, but because your entire presentation, the truck, the fair price you never haggle but never overpay there, the same 3 shirts you rotate through most weeks, simply never trips the wire that would make Hollis start doing the math. Small towns are excellent at spotting money. They're just calibrated to spot a specific, familiar amount of it, and anything past that ceiling reads, paradoxically, as less suspicious, not more, because it no longer resembles anything the town has a category for. The one person who comes closest to guessing is your accountant, a woman 2 states away named Priscilla who's handled your filings since before the move, and who mentions, almost every year at tax time, some version of the same gentle confusion. You know you could live anywhere, she says this particular year, going through your return over a video call, your farmhouse kitchen visible behind you, the same chipped mug you've had since college sitting on the counter. You could have 3 houses and a place in the city and staff to run all of it. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying I run your numbers every year, and every year you're living like someone worth about 4% of what you're actually worth. You tell her the truth, the one you've given some version of for years now, that the 4% version of the life is the one you actually want, and the other 96% just sits there, compounding, funding things quietly, a scholarship at the county's one high school that nobody's traced back to you, a bridge loan to the volunteer fire department for that second truck Hollis's friends were arguing about, routed through a small local foundation with a name that gives away nothing. Priscilla's asked you, more than once, gently, whether you ever get lonely doing it this way, hiding a fortune from people you've come to genuinely care about. You tell her the honest answer, the one that took you years to fully believe yourself, you're not hiding it from them. You're just declining to let it become the main character of relationships that work better without it in the room. The accountant who sees the real numbers every year is often the only person who understands the full shape of the choice you're making. Everyone else just sees the shape of an ordinary life, which was always the entire point of building it this carefully. The closest call, the one that actually could have unraveled all of it, happens at the county fair in your 5th summer, at the pie auction, of all places, a fundraiser for the volunteer fire department you've already quietly helped once through the foundation nobody's traced. The auctioneer, a man everyone calls Dutch, is running the bidding on a rhubarb pie baked by an 11-year-old girl named Marley, whose family's had a rough year, her father laid off from the plant 2 towns over, a baby sister born early with complications the insurance only partly covered. The bidding starts at $5, the way it always does for these pies, climbs to $20, $30, the crowd doing its usual friendly, competitive thing, everyone knowing everyone's kids, everyone wanting to help without making a production of helping. You bid, almost without deciding to, the way you sometimes do at these things, and the number climbs past what anyone in this crowd has ever paid for a pie at this fair, past $100, past $200, the room going quiet in that specific way a room goes quiet when something unusual is happening in front of it. You stop at $340, an enormous, absurd number for a pie, a number that could have, in a different room, told everyone present exactly what you were and weren't hiding. It doesn't, though, and understanding why is the whole lesson of that afternoon. The crowd reads the bid the way small towns read almost everything, as a kind gesture from someone who cares about the family, not as evidence of a specific net worth, because $340 is a lot of money to almost everyone in that tent, and a lot of money, and $80 million. Register, in a room like that, as the exact same category, generous. The specific size of the gesture gets absorbed into a general impression of kindness, rather than parsed for what it actually reveals about the account it came from. Marley's father finds you afterward, shakes your hand too long, tells you it means more than you know, and you tell him, honestly, that it was worth every penny, and neither of you ever discusses the actual number again. A gesture that would expose you in a wealthy zip code disappears completely in a place where everyone's generosity gets measured by the same rough, forgiving scale, not by the size of the number, but by the fact that you showed up and cared at all. The moment you come closest to telling someone the whole truth, deliberately, happens with your own kid, 17 now, born 2 years after you moved here, who's never known any life but this one, and who asks you, one evening on the porch, the question you've been quietly expecting for years. She's just gotten back from a college visit 2 states over, a school with a price tag that made her go quiet in the car the whole drive home, and she asks you, carefully, the way she asks most serious things, whether money's going to be a problem, whether she needs to be looking at scholarships and loans the way most of her friends are. You tell her the truth, the actual number, sitting on the porch in the same chairs you've had since you moved here, and you watch her do the specific recalibration everyone does the first time they hear it, a kind of silent, internal reshuffling of everything she thought she understood about her own life. She's quiet for a long moment, looking out at the same fields Hollis fixed the barn roof over, the same fields where the deer get into your beans every August. Then why do we live like this? She finally asks, not accusingly, just genuinely curious, the way she's genuinely curious about most things. You tell her the real answer, the one you've never fully said out loud to anyone but Priscilla, in pieces over years. That the $80 million was never the life. It was just the thing that made this specific life, the truck, the checkout line, Dad asking about your beans, Hollis and his kids, Marley's pie, completely, permanently safe to keep choosing, year after year, without ever having to worry about whether choosing it was foolish. The money was never hidden because you were ashamed of it. It was hidden because the second a place learns your real number, it stops being the place you actually live, and starts being the place you're merely wealthy in, and those, it turns out, are never quite the same address. You're back in the checkout line a few weeks later, same basket, dish soap and coffee, and this time a card for Hollis's daughter's graduation, and Dot rings you up the way she always has, asking whether the frost held off long enough for the last of the tomatoes. It didn't, you tell her. Lost the whole back row overnight. She says that's about right for this time of year, and hands you your receipt, and you walk out to the same truck, into a town that still has no category in its head for what you're actually worth, 11 years and $80 million into a life built, deliberately, invisibly, one honest conversation at a time, in the one place on earth specifically designed by no one, and understood by almost nobody. To never once asked you the question that would have changed everything.